money is simply an echo of value, right? It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the focus must be on bringing value to them. The money you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value you've provided.
Welcome to the Unstoppables. This is the place where we turn those intentions into dollars. Today, I have a guest. His name is Bob Burg, and I actually read his book before he came on the show. Before I even knew who Bob Burg was, I saw this book, and it was fascinating. And I read his book. He is a much sought after speaker. And after you hear this interview, you'll know why. He's sought to speak at company leadership forums, sales conferences. He even shared the stage with the United States president. So I'm trying to be equal to the task to keep up with my elite guest. He's the author of a number of books, and now I'm really jealous. And when you hear this number, you're not going to believe it, or you'll believe it when you talk to him. But wow, he's got total book sales of over 1 million copies.
Wow. We got some work to do.
We got a lot of work to do. So I'm really jealous. The Go-Giver was co-authored with John David Mann. It's sold over 500,000 copies. It's been translated into 21 languages. Mm-hmm. Bob, welcome to the show. It's an honor.
Thank you. Well, the honor's mine. Thanks for having me.
You're an advocate, supporter, and defender of something I love, the free enterprise system. You believe that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. Tell me about it.
Well, in the basically free market-based economy in which we live, you can only earn money. You can only profit based on serving others who willingly buy from you. You know, when I speak at sales conferences, I'll often begin by saying, you know, nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person who believes in your product or service. They're going to buy from you only because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's the only reason why anyone should buy.
You're bringing me to Earl Nightingale, and you know, just everything in life. And I learned this, and I take this, and we're in the same book, the same page. Everything in life is in the service of another. You are either serving others or you are out of business. It's just life. It is what supports our life moving forward. Yeah. So I love that. And you're calling people out on personal responsibility and accountability. And you're right, no one's going to care about your quota. I've been saying here, you know, why should I care more about your quota than you? But no one cares. No one's going to buy from you. You've got to be able to create that value. Tell me about your background and how you got started in your career.
Well, I began as a broadcaster. I started in radio sports, and then I got a job in television news in a very small ABC affiliate in the Midwest. I really wasn't very good at it. I could read the news. I mean, that's pretty easy. You read what's in front of you. But as far as journalistic abilities go, I was 24 years old. I didn't really understand the news, and I didn't really care. You know, I mean, I really wanted to be a sportscaster. And
so what sports did you cover?
Sports that I cover? Well, when I was a broadcaster in radio, just all, you know, I was the sports guy. So whatever sport was there, I was covering.
Did you do live? Did you like baseball, football?
No, just reporting on it. Yeah. Although when I was in college, I did the play-by-play for the basketball team, which was always a lot of fun. And I thought maybe I'd be doing that one day, but that didn't happen. But no, as a radio broadcaster, it was just more, you read the sports, you know, although I got to do some great interviews with people, and, you know, you really learn about people when you're interviewing a really big star, and you see how, you know, some of them maybe have an attitude and others are the most humble, the nicest people. And I'll tell you, for those of you, one of my favorite stories of that is a guy named Bobby Orr, who was
hockey.
Yeah. Now this was... Yeah, well, I grew up in the 70s, and you know, Bobby Orr was Mr. Hockey. I mean, you know, Wayne Gretzky might have been the greatest, and I don't take anything away from him. He was fantastic. He was amazing. But Bobby Orr controlled the game to the point that the game was played as Orr wanted it to be played. I mean, he was that good. He was that great. And he was even more humble than he was talented. And when I saw him at this golf tournament I covered, and he was one of the celebrity golfers, I saw him and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to actually try to go up and interview Bobby Orr. And I really kind of froze. And I'm ashamed to say that now, but I did. And I walked over to him, and it's like he could tell that I was nervous. And what he did is he grabbed my arm, he locked his arm and mine together, and he just walked with me. And he said, what would you like to talk about? Or how are you today? I can't remember what he said. It was just that when he grabbed and locked arms with me, he just went out of his way to make this young rookie report feel okay and feel confident. And I never forgot that. And everyone else I ever talked to about Orr had those similar experiences.
That speaks direct volumes to the quality of character.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're exactly right.
And that's a lesson you take and you've passed on and lived your life, I assume, in the same manner. So
thank you. Yeah, try.
I tell people, I do a number of talks as well. And I tell people there's really two types of people. Those that are entitled and they think that the world owes them that living, that cares about their quotas, right? And the ones that live from a place of gratitude. And when you live from a place of gratitude, that's a sharing place. And to me, that is a cooperation shit. And that is where I get my biggest bounce. That's where I think I really, really start to author my legacy. And I think that's what's most important to me. So you're in sports. By the way, where'd you go to school? What college?
I went to a tiny little college, North Adams State College in Massachusetts. And I often say I got into college on academic probation, which a lot of people did. But I also graduated on academic probation. I mean, I was not a student when I was in school. I didn't become a real student until I graduated into sales. See, on TV, I didn't last long, okay? But what happened was I began to sell advertising for that TV station I was working for. And I floundered for the first few months because I knew nothing about selling. But then I was in a bookstore one day, and again, this is almost 40 years ago now. I was in a bookstore. This is back in the day when bookstores were most known for selling books, as opposed to coffee and pastry and, all sorts of things.
Kelsey just raised an eyebrow and said, what?
What? That was a thing?
Actually sold books in bookstores?
And I happened to see a couple of books that were there. One was How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, and there was a book by Zig Ziglar. I got the books. I didn't even realize that knowledge about selling was even a thing. I just thought, because the training I got was kind of negligible at best. It was go in, talk to people, try to close, get out of there. I mean, that was my training. So I got the books, and I began to really study them and practice and apply. And I got to tell you, within a few weeks, my sales actually began to go through the roof. Why? Because now I had a system for doing it. What is a system? Really, it's the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. Hey, if it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, all you need to do is A.
Yes.
You'll get the desired results of B. But you've got to, and you always talk about taking action, right? Taking that responsibility to take it. Well, you got to take action. You've got to do it. It's not just a matter of having the idea, but if you'll apply that system, a proven system, you're going to be successful.
And you're creating the system, and you've got to believe in that system by proving results in A and B, creating that result. You got to stay true to it. So many people don't have a system, but they have a wish, or they have a hope, or they have a process that it's one or two tries and then they stop. So they're not even tailoring, they're just shutting it down. What do you think and system may be one of them, what do you think your greatest sales strength was? What is the thing that made you unstoppable in sales where you just look, ooh?
Well, there were a couple of things. One was that I was teachable and I could learn. And once I started applying the information, then I started getting audio tapes. Kelsey, this is another thing, audio tapes, not CDs. This is one step above an 8-track tape, right? Okay.
You're speaking Chinese to a person that does not know where China is.
8-track cassette tapes. And I began studying and I'd go to the program. So I was a student. I learned. But here's what the difference maker was. I was doing good. I was doing well in sales, but I was sort of like Joe in the Go-Giver. I had a lot of potential, but I just wasn't quite reaching it. There was something really missing. And it was really my focus. And I remember one day, I was now in another sales job, and I was selling a high-end product. And I remember coming back to the company, to the office one day, and I must have looked kind of disgruntled because I had, not made a sale, and I should have, and blah, blah, blah. And there was an older guy there. I say older guy, probably my age now, but back then he was a really old guy. Right? And he said, and he saw me, and he wasn't even in the sales department. He was in another department, and I think he retired soon after. But he said, Berg, can I give you some advice? I said, sure, absolutely. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in business, actually said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he continued, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. Your target is serving others.
That is great early mentorship.
Yeah.
I always say, don't focus on the wallet. Look instead to the hearts and minds. The wallet. Don't focus on the wallet. And I've always lived that. So there's a reason we're connecting. Number one, I find you to be very honest, because I asked you if the audience can see those books behind Bob. I said, did you read them all? He said, no, but I feel guilty. So I've read most of them. So I would have said, kind of vague on the answer. You talk about an entrepreneurial spirit. What about those who aren't true entrepreneurs? Does the message in the Go-Giver, that book you wrote that's sold, what, 500,000 copies right now, does it apply to them as well?
Yeah, I think it applies to everyone because, we think of an entrepreneur as having their own business, whether it's taking that risk, investing their money, their time, other people's money, whatever it is they're doing, and basically being their own boss, so forth. And that's certainly a great definition of it, if that's what you want to use. But even when someone's working within another company, maybe they're not an entrepreneur by definition, but they are an intrapreneur. Mm-hmm. They're an entrepreneur within another person's organization. Yes. And remember when we were saying how no one's going to buy from you because, you need the money. Well, no one's going to hire you because you want a job. They're not going to keep you because you have a mortgage to meet. They're going to hire you. They're going to keep you. They're going to promote you, advance you, what have you, because you are focused totally and absolutely on bringing so much value to that operation, to that company. Only in this case, your customer or client is your fellow employees, your supervisor, the owner of the company, the end users, maybe whatever it is you happen to do. But that's why that focus is always on providing value, giving more in value.
Yes.
Than and that's the key.
We have an interesting admixture of millennials and people who are in my stage and age of life in this place. And the key focus is for me to point out the windows in these Friday meetings and tell everyone who they work for. They work for that client. They don't work for me. And the more value you create for yourself, the more indispensable you become to that company. That value creates and translates into a fungible application on the street. More important for yourself because you work for yourself. But you got to create value. And the ones that are the arbiters of that value are the people you serve. And first place you got to serve is yourself. And the way you became unstoppable, is to serve yourself in this way. You understood from Bobby Orr the importance of humility, and you walk the walk, literally. You're teachable, and your target is to serve others first. Now that has made Bob Burg unstoppable in sales. And I want to say this about your book, The Go-Giver. When I saw The Go-Giver, it was featured in a magazine as one of the top 5 books you have to read. And I saw it, I looked at the cover, it's a cool cover, and I thought, I'm gonna get this book. So I started reading the book. If I don't know, but The Go-Giver, just the title alone resonated with me because that's the nature of it's my DNA. If I don't know what The Go-Giver is about, give me a couple sentences, pull me over and tell me why I should buy this book.
Sure. And it's a business parable. So it's actually a fictional work, though many of the incidents in there are happened in real life, either from me or from my co-author, John David Mann, who is really the lead writer and storyteller. I'm a how-to guy, right? Which you can probably tell. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. John's a great writer. He's a storyteller. Fantastic. But really, it's this. It's understanding that shifting one's focus. And again, this is the key, shifting one's focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others, understanding that not only is that a pleasant way to do business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. Again, for the reasons you and I talked about, right? Because it's, and what this does is it ensures that that salesperson or entrepreneur or what have you is always focused on bringing value to that other person, which, by the way, is the reason why we say that money is simply an echo of value, right? It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the focus must be on bringing value to them. The money you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value you've provided. You know?
Yeah, money is an echo of value.
Yeah.
I love that. And you're going to see that out in the Twitter universe, and I'm going to take credit for it.
All right.
No, I'm not. I'm giving it, I love that one.
It's interesting because when you think about selling, right, and so many people have a backwards notion of selling, right? They think selling is trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need. That's not selling. That's called being a con artist, right?
Yeah, or an extortionist, same thing, yeah.
Selling, by definition, is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, desires, and helping them to get it. And you do that by asking questions, and by listening and being able to solve problems or help them get, and that's, you know, when you look at selling that way, now, you know, you're doing something righteous, you're doing something that's benefiting and adding value to the world.
That's my version of qualifying. That's what I say. The most important thing to me is to be able to qualify an opportunity from a conversation. And once you're in there with that person, once you have won that heart and mind, and you never deflect, and you can't look at that wallet, because the first time a person thinks that it feels that you don't care about them, you're pretty much done.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You got to keep raising that bar of value, because you just keep raising the bar of value by discovering, as you said, and then anticipating after the discovery and keep raising the bar of value. You're going to be untouchable, unstoppable. You're just going to keep moving.
Absolutely unstoppable. Yep.
You got something that caught my eye. You have the 5 laws that will bring you both personal and effectiveness in professional success. So personal and professional, there's 5 laws. What are they?
Yeah, the laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And, you know, the first one, the law of value, which we've sort of been discussing, is just having such a focus on providing that value that you take price out of the equation. See, we don't want people selling on low price. When you sell it, let's face it, technology has commoditized much of the world.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of difference anymore between products and services. Most are the same. Most pretty much work. So if a prospective customer sees no significant difference in any products or services, they're always going to go with who has the lowest price. Now, unless your last name is Walmart, selling on low price is not a good way to do business, right? It's not fun. It's not profitable. It's nerve-wracking. No. And so what you've got to do is when there isn't a whole lot of difference necessarily in the product or service, you've got to be that additional value.
Yes.
You've got to separate yourself from others. How? Well, you know, you can probably, there are probably hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to 5 what we call elements of value. And they are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. You mentioned appreciation, gratitude earlier. And so to the degree that you can communicate, you and everyone on your team can communicate those elements of value at every touch point with this person, from the time they're prospects to all the way through to their referral sources and so forth. Well, that's the degree you take price out of the equation. When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource.
And as I say to the salespeople in here, how would you want to be recognized? How do you want to be known? As a transaction, or do you want to be that person who's consultative, and really at a certain point you become a friend? But that's where the value to me is. I know you don't want to devalue your person, because that to me is very important. I want to say something. We talked about dress and, you know, who's wearing what. I told you a story about NFL player who was wearing a tight sweater, and I want to wear it next time he's on there. So I want to say hello to Leonard Wheeler. So I want your sweater, Leonard. Just gonna do it in a different color. So that's what I like. How does a person add that value? You talked about every touch point, which I loved. How do they add value without costing too much money? You might have a low price.
And it doesn't take money to add that kind of exceptional value. It's the way you greet someone. It's the way you make someone feel.
Let's talk about greeting.
Well,
so how do you greet somebody? I talk about the greeting for me.
Well, let's take, for example, the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain. Okay, when you enter that hotel, every single guest contact employee there, they will never greet you by saying, "Hey, hi," or "How you doing?" It's always going to be good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon the time of day. Now, when you need them for something and you ask a question, first they will stop and put down what they're doing in order to serve you and help you. Afterwards, when you say thank you, they will not say no problem. They won't even say you're welcome. They'll say my pleasure.
Yes.
And they'll say it every single time. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, Bob, I get that, but that's the Ritz-Carlton. They're they've got money to invest in their trip. You know what? Any other hotel, motel, small, could big or small, could do it. Marriott could do it. Hyatt could do it. Fine properties. They could all do it. Sometimes they do, but not always. Super 8 Hotel could do it. Motel 6, where Tom Bodette leaves the lights on for us. They could do it too. And so could Dave and Mary and their team of 4 people at Dave and Mary's Stop and Stay Inn. They could do it too. Okay. Now, you might say, well, wait a second. Dave and Mary Stop and Stay In. They could say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and my pleasure till the cows come home. They're not going to take market share away from Ritz-Carlton. No, of course they're not. But they will own their targeted demographic. And they will probably take market share from Motel 6 and maybe even Super 8. They'll become known as that small place that just cares about you and knows you and makes you feel so good and important. And that doesn't cost a lot of money. That's just,
And what you're creating, the way I hear this, is 2 things. You're creating that level of difference that that creates the separation. So first, here's the awareness of something totally different, it's appreciation, and then there's a difference. And in that middle, that's where you can just keep making those touch points of value.
Yeah. Oh,
keep moving that bar. But you've got to be out there with that first bam, because that first impression is most critical. To me, the look in the eye, not looking down at your phone, not being focused and centered, and being present with a person, not overthinking or trying to talk when they're speaking, kind of like I'm doing with you. But you really want to be, I know I just can't apply all the time. Bob, what's the one piece of advice that you received before you knew anything about being a go-giver and that was a real difference maker for you?
Well, I think the fact that I got to be born into and born to 2 excellent parents who just, to me, they embodied what being a go-giver is. Now, it's not a name we would have had for it. It's not something but I just got to see how they just brought value to everyone's life. And, my dad has always been just the master of people skills, but with him, it was very natural, because he really had such a caring about people, and it didn't matter where he went or who he was talking to. When he came back by the time he came back that second time, people knew him and loved him. And I got to watch that. And I got to see someone who, I guess I could say the single greatest people skill really is a highly developed and authentic interest in the other person.
Yes.
And when you've got that, people know. They can sense that. And
it's manifested by questions.
Yeah.
Questions that are really, trying to get to know the other person. That's how I think the manifestation. And so many of us in sales try to talk. We want to show up and we want to show what we know. And we never learn about other people and what really take a genuine interest in their welfare. And I think that's a corollary to empathy as well, which is something that is key along with ego to be great in sales. Mentorship is very important to me. So what I'm doing now is, I think, a really high-end form of mentorship, and I love it. I want to create that legacy. I want to have a worthy mentee, and I need to be worthy of the mentee. So, what is the best way that you could recommend for people to find a mentor?
First, it's a great question because I think that is so important, because having a good mentor can really just cut your learning curve time in years. It's just such a fantastic thing. I think first of all, and let me approach it if I can from a negative point. The way sometimes I see people trying to obtain a mentor is there will be someone who they respect, obviously, and whose work they appreciate, and they'll just kind of come right out and say, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" Or, "I'm looking for a mentor. Will you be my mentor?" It's sort of like, asking somebody, there's the only, asking somebody to marry you before asking them out on a date.
That's not normal?
Right. No, I guess. And so a mentor protege or mentor mentee relationship is a relationship, and it develops over time. So what I would do is, sure, you can ask that person for advice, in a respectful way, in a humble way. You can let that person know that you followed their career. I'm in the process of beginning a business or growing my, what have you. And I understand you're very busy. So if the time isn't there, or if this is inappropriate, that's absolutely fine. I'd love to ask you one or two very specific questions, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
So now what you've done is you've honored the process.
Mm-hmm.
You've honored that person. You haven't, as you were talking about earlier, you haven't come across as entitled,
Mm-hmm.
right? As though they owe you some, right? As though they owe you their 40 years of experience, right? Even though they don't know you from a hole in the wall. So in most people, not all, but most people will say, sure, absolutely, go ahead. And so you ask that one or two questions. Of course, make sure you research that person. There's no excuse not to do that with the internet. And so you don't ask them something that you could have known the answer by just researching it. But when they've given you their time, and you make sure not to take up too much of their time, you want to respect that, and then let them know how much you appreciate it, and you'll let them know how. Then that very day, I would write a handwritten, personalized thank you note, at letting them know how much you appreciate their time and wisdom, and that you look forward to putting it to use right away, and I'll keep it up, boom, send it out. Now, I would also maybe even that day or a couple days later, and again, this from looking them up and finding out about them, maybe what their favorite charity or cause is. Make a small donation. Doesn't have to be anything big, but maybe a small donation in their name, okay, to that charity. It'll get back to them. They'll be sent to, and you're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but again, you're just doing it to respect the process. You're communicating how much you want to be able to also add value to them. And then, maybe a couple weeks later or a month later, what happens, you report back, let them know what happened, and you maybe have another question to ask, or now over time, perhaps a relationship, a mentor protege or mentee relationship it develops. So that's fine. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't, but it might. And that's really the way to do it, I think, in a way that they're going to be most open to it.
You, my friend, are pointing us to a field of diamonds. It's a field of diamonds. But, like seeks like. We do business with people we like, people that are like us, or people that we want to be like. When you mentioned and this is crucial for a diamond for the audience, when you mentioned that handwritten note, that's separation, that's attention. When you mentioned thanking people for their time and their consideration, that is a huge difference maker. It sounds so simple, but that is the thing that I try to inculcate in this company and have for 23 years, because it's a difference maker. It's the extension of personal appreciation. You've taken the effort, you separate yourself from the field, because you know what, Bob, most of the field doesn't do it.
That's exactly it. Absolutely.
They don't do it. You also opened a door for me, for my creative mind, so be careful when this thing is open. There might be bats coming out of here, but you said, what you're saying is don't close too fast. It's the same thing when you talked about marriage. You don't want to get up to the head of the aisle and open up and do, what am I marrying? So you really have to have a dating process. So many people try to close too fast. You're always closing. It's a process of familiarity, of getting to know. But people who go for that too quickly end up probably getting the big no. And then you're shocked by what it is that you gave the vows to. It's just my way of looking at it. So I'm very careful with that. How does the protege then provide value to the mentor? What do you look at?
Well, There's a number of ways. One, of course, is just by being grateful and communicating that gratitude. You can look for ways to serve them. Again, whether it's that small donation or, maybe they're a collector of old books on Roman history or something, and you find a collector's edition and you have it sent to them. Or you never know what this person needs help with in some way that is not in their area of expertise. And when you can be the conduit for that or in some way help that, there's lots of ways that you can, just with a little bit of imagination, that you can provide value to that person.
Bob, in the world of business, power is finite. And I think influence is infinite. So I think there's a finite level of power, and power can be seen as direct span of control. You do this. Situational authority. At this time, we have to take this hill this way. And then what I strive for, which is influence. So one of the principles of your book is influence. How does a go-giver create influence personally and in business? So why don't you share how you think a person would create that influence and share it?
Okay. Well, I think that influence itself can be defined on a very, very basic level as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Now, I see that as the definition. I don't see that as the essence of influence. I think the essence of influence is pull as opposed to push, as in how far can you push a rope?
Yeah.
And the answer is not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't put, you very rarely hear someone say, wow, that's Susan or that Dave. He is so influential. He has a lot of push with people, right? No, he's so pushy. It's just great. No, you don't hear that.
No.
Pull is an attraction. Great influencers attract people first to their ideas and then first to themselves, then to their ideas. And they do this, again, not through pushing themselves or pushing their will or being pushy toward others, but through that pull. Now, that pull is very positive, whereas the push tends to be that, as you were saying, positional authority.
Yes.
It's compelling people to do things. And the challenge with that, the issue with trying to lead or influence through force, if you will, is that at best the people who have to follow you, whether it's employees or someone, they're going to do the least amount, put the least amount of effort that they can. At worst, they'll find a way to sabotage the process completely. Okay, so it's never that is never really sustainable. I think the best influencers, the great influencers, are always, they understand what I believe was Dale Carnegie's underlying premise in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's where he said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons, right? So the great influencers always asking themselves questions and checking their own premises and their own motives. They're asking, how does what I'm asking this person to do align with their goals, with their wants, their needs, their desires? How does what I'm asking this other person to do align with their value? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way to build everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment rather than compliance.
If I hear go-giver, and I'm a people pleaser by nature, so I have to work with that. It almost, to me, conjures up thoughts that I'm giving, and maybe being taken advantage of. And so how do you really limit that whole giving, and with not being taken advantage of?
Well, I think it's very natural when someone sees the title, if they haven't read the book, that they may think it's about that. They may think it's about not making a profit, just giving yourself away. And again, as we talked about, go-givers tend to be the most profitable because they're focused on value, not on price, right? So, but there's that bigger issue, as you say. Being a go-giver should never be confused with being anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way, shape, or form. If you're being taken advantage of, it's not because you're nice, it's not because you're this, it's not. If you're being taken advantage of, it's because you're doing things in such a way as to allow yourself to be taken advantage of. Being a go-giver simply means you understand that your focus needs to be on creating value for others in the marketplace. It's understanding, as Joe was taught by several of the mentors in the story, that the golden rule of business, of sales, of leadership, of life, what have you, is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to and allow themselves to be influenced by those people they know, like, and trust.
There you go.
There's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by genuinely, again, authentically moving from what we call an I focus or me focus to an other focus.
You know, there's something in my book that I live, and it's called Walkaway Power. WAP is the acronym WAP. It's he or she who cares least controls most. It's not so much a control factor, but it's a self-respect factor. Sure. Maintaining your level of self-respect without giving that away to others, because that's something only you can give away. There's no way Bob's going to respect you if you don't keep your self-respect. It's part of WAP, and it's part of being a go-giver, but you've got to value yourself. And I think that's critical to the next question, success. And how does Bob Burg define success?
Well, success is another one of those terms that it has different definitions, and it's sort of contextual in nature because, you know, on a basic level, success is the accomplishment of a certain goal, right?
Right.
Want to lose 20 pounds in 4 months and you do it, you were successful. If you don't, you weren't, or maybe you were 90% successful. Or one team beats the other team. That first team was successful. The other team wasn't. Although we could also say if that other team, even the one who lost, played better than they did the game before, well, maybe they won because they improved, whatever. But they didn't. So, but we could also say success is happiness. If you're happy, you're successful. So what's happiness? Well, happiness is a genuine, ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with your values.
Right.
We could also say success, and we were talking earlier about Earl Nightingale.
Mm-hmm.
I loved his definition of success, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
There you go.
You know, so to him, success was just the fact that you were progressing toward a worthy ideal. And worthy ideal is the key, because becoming the number one drug dealer on your block, well, that's not a worthy ideal.
Right.
But doing something that's actually serving and benefiting others is a worthy ideal. So as long as you're progressing toward that worthy ideal, you're successful. So, and there's many definitions, of success. The UCLA coach, John Wooden, whose definition of success was really a feeling of self-satisfaction and peace of mind, knowing that you did the best you were capable of doing. He never talked about winning, actually. He just talked about doing the best that you could do. And so there's all sorts, and I don't think any of those definitions conflict. Right. I think they all complement each other.
I have Wooden's pyramid outside the office, and you're actually wearing UCLA powder blue.
So that's right. That's right.
Back to you on this. So how does Bob Burg define success?
I would say success is a feeling of happiness and peace of mind based on having done one's best to live up to their potential. Wow. So as long as you did your best in a certain area, whether it's financial, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social, what have you, as long as you've done your best and are continuing to do your best, that's the degree to which you were successful.
I want to buy some copies of the Go Giver. Where do I find it? I want to give it out to some people in here. They need to read it.
Probably the best thing to do is to go to, and thank you for that, is to go to The Go Giver without the hyphen, thegogiver.com. And if they scroll down, they'll see the part where it has a thing for the book. They can get a chapter so that they can read it first. And then there's a link for bulk orders if people would like to do that and so forth.
What do you think people would take from the book? What's your intent? When you wrote the book, if you could change, one mind or influence a mind and really own a heart, what do you think about? What was you?
Well, we hear different things from different people, and we love it because people seem to take out of it what they need. For example, that the shift in focus, I think, is the big thing most people get. Okay. Some people, by the way, a lot of people do this intuitively. That they were doing it long before they ever read the book. Our initial adopters of the book, if you will, were people who wrote to us saying, "This is what I've always done. This is what I've tried to tell people what to do." We just put a name, John and I just put a name to it, and we always enjoy that. And then there were the ones that had to really read about it to get that shift in focus. Others, a lot of them, it's the law of receptivity, the fifth one. We've had people say, reading this chapter gave me finally permission to know that it was okay to receive, which, it's sad to think about, but we're also glad that we could help in that regard. With some people it's influence, with some people it's understanding that law of compensation, that the more people whose lives you touch, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So I think it depends on the person.
As an achiever, and you are a tremendous achiever, you have that resilient gene, you have that always forward gene. But along the way, there are going to be those travails. There are going to be the triumphs with the travails. So what is your biggest failure to date?
Oh, biggest failure? Hard to choose just one. I mean, there's lots and lots of failures.
What's the most significant?
Well, I would say that in any area where I think I should be further ahead than I am right now, that I haven't been, well, that would be a failure. I think one big mistake I made, which nearly put me out of business, was back in the late 90s when technology was really coming into play. And I had built up a really good speaking business, and I was kind of on a roll, and technology started to really, and I said, I'm doing well enough, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And it didn't work out that way. It's funny. There's in the world of personal development, which you and I are, and most of our, your viewers, we're all involved with. We probably all have many of the same books, but there's sort of what I call a political correctness of the personal development world, and where certain things are just accepted as fact. And one of those things is change is good. You should enjoy change. Change is what I hate change.
We all do. We're human.
But here's the thing. It's not that we have to like it. We just have to accept it and embrace it if we want the right results.
Adaptation, survival, forward. Yes, we have to adapt.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You have become unstoppable because you understand from the mindset and the shift of serving others, and that to serve others is really serving yourself. That has made you unstoppable. Along the way, there was and I only mean one, there's probably had 20, 30, 40, 50, defining moment, but I only want your most significant defining moment. What has defined you?
I would go back, I think, to that person who gave me that piece of advice when I'd been in sales for a couple of years about shifting from the money mindset to the service mindset. I think that really, because what that did is it really reframed what selling was. It made me understand that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Just like great leadership is never about the leader, and great influence is never about the influencer. It's about those lives you choose to touch. It's about everyone whose lives you choose to add value to. And from the moment I kind of got that, and the interesting thing is I grew up with that sort of thing, because remember, my parents weren't very much like that, but you know how it is sometimes. You know it's part of you, but you drift away from it, and when it's your own, and I kind of had to relearn it from a stranger. And then then I said, you know what, it's just a better way of doing. And once I began doing that, now it was a huge issue.
Well, it's fun. You're open. And it's funny because sometimes the people closest to us who have some of the most sagacious knowledge, we're not willing to take it in because it's
amazing.
Familiar. An outside source tends to have more credibility because it's coming from an outside source. We're more open to it.
Brilliant. Wow. Yeah.
But you have a great voice for sports, Bill, by the way. Your broadcast voice is still working for you.
I thought you were going to say I have a great face for radio.
I was going to say that about myself. But obviously, we're going a little further here. You've been great, and you've had such great diamonds. I think such great value. Where can the viewer find you?
Well, I'm sort of all over the internet at this point, but they can always get to me from, I guess, headquarters would be thegogiver.com. or even Burg, BURG.com. But the GoGiver.com has more stuff. But they can connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm on there a lot.
This is a show where we really attempt to teach people, share and show them, if you get off the couch, start cashing those intentions, take action, do those things that will make you unstoppable. Because the only thing you can do is to take those decisive actions. You got to adjust. You got to learn from failure. You've got to embrace your own version of success, not someone else's that you cut and paste. You have been a font of knowledge on this show. You have been a highlight for us on this show. His name is Bob Burg, my guest, my new friend. You are unstoppable, sir, and I appreciate you being on the show. Could you stick around a little bit, because I just want to talk to you, pick your brain a little more. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.